Hello, welcome to the Key Stage 4 information evening for parents and carers. Of course, this would normally be done in school, but thank you very much for accessing this online, and thank you for your continued support of school as your child moves into Key Stage 4 and their GCSE studies. My name's Chris Ives, I'm the Associate Head Teacher, and I'll be talking to you about the curriculum and various things that we've dealt with over the past few years that I'd like you to be aware of. Then Ruth McQuire will talk to you about progress through Key Stage 4 and the way we want the students to work and think about school. And then we've got our heads of English and Maths, Sarah Fairbairn and Don Walker, to talk to you about those subjects in particular, and finishing with Phil Alker, the head of Year 10, who you know very well, to talk about pastoral support. We often use this quote when we're talking about our curriculum at St Aidan's. It's from Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Years ago I came across Parkinson's law: work expands to fill the time available for its completion. Since then I discovered another more hopeful principle: young people grow to fill the space we create for them. And I wanted to set that as the scene really for talking about the curriculum, because we're talking about GCSEs, we're talking about studies leading towards examinations and results and outcomes, but actually our curriculum at St Aidan's is so much more than that. It's difficult at this time with lots of things having to be postponed, but we are still working really hard to make sure that students are well looked after, and the space we have for them at St Aidan's is taking full account of both current circumstances and looking forward and trying to still have as many extracurricular activities as possible. The school isn't just about results, although you'll see later on they are superb. The school is about your child and how they work, and the climate and the culture of St Aidan's as well. And we think that the space that we create is absolutely spot on really for students to thrive at St Aidan's and to then do well in their studies as well. So the first thing to mention is that we're working with reformed GCSEs. All subjects that we're now teaching at Key Stage 4 have been changed in the past few years. We've been through them start to finish 2 or 3 times, and so are getting used to them. The main things to mention are that firstly there's new content that was supposed to be more rigorous, introducing content that would lead from Key Stage 2 to 3 through to different A levels and new content at A levels as well, and prepare them for that. That has meant there's been a reduction in control assessment as well in order to look at examinations, and there's an increase in examinations. So students will do more examination work and less work as they go through. There's still some controlled assessment in some subjects, but this has been reduced and taken away from some subjects completely. This means you work in a slightly different way, and you'll hear a bit more about that later on. Actually, at St Aidan's we find students cope very well with exams. We work very hard to lead them through sensibly to exams and prepare them well for it. So we're happy with it, but it is a different way of working than say 5-6 years ago in terms of how it works. The second thing to mention there is that there is a new grading system, and you may well be aware of this with changes we've put in place at Key Stage 3, and I'll talk a bit more about how that new grading system works. So the new grading is the top line. It's graded in numbers now for GCSE, grades 1 to 9 in most subjects. There are some vocational courses that still work with merits and distinctions, but most subjects that are taken now at Key Stage 4 will be graded 1 to 9, as opposed to A star to G or G to A star. Now the reason I've laid it out like this is to just raise a couple of things with you. The reason for doing the 1 to 9, not necessarily because they could add a 10 on after a while, but it was to stretch that top end. And you'll see that actually a 7 in the new grading system is equivalent to an A, or 7 or above is equivalent to an A or above, an A or an A star. But there are 3 grades in that boundary at the top end. So actually the same number of students, as these qualifications have first been introduced, the same number of students would be getting nationally 7 to 9 as previously would get A to A star. The other boundary is the 4 and C boundary, so a grade 4 is equivalent to what used to be a grade C, and the same number of students going forward, or certainly to begin with, the same number of students will get 4 and above as would previously have got C and above, or the same proportion. So a 7 or above is equivalent to an old A and A star, and a 4 and above is equivalent to a C and above. Now, I wanted to point this out, and I've laid it out like this on screen because I want you to think a bit about how it feels to be one of those numbers. Firstly, a grade 4, you might argue, and I think it probably looks like this, feels quite a long way away from a 9 when you think about it in a linear order. Whereas a C maybe didn't feel quite as far away from an A star. C seems more in the middle, a 4 seems a bit more toward the bottom. But a 4 is a level 2 threshold, a 4 is a pass on a level 2 qualification. A 4 in English and Maths, for example, means you wouldn't have to continue studying English and Maths moving into the sixth form or onto college. But it may not feel that way, and somebody with a benchmark or forecast of a 4 may not feel that quite as be feeling quite as good about that as they may have a C, where it's got more grades below it. And similarly with a 7, 8 and 9, actually, we do find that students have done extremely well. There are fewer 9s certainly than there were A stars in the past. The 9s are particularly set out really for a smaller number of students at the very top end of the qualifications. And actually students who are getting 7, 8 and 9 may not feel, or 7, 8 may not feel that's quite as good as the old A and A star in their minds, and it is, and it's important to recognise that, you know, if you're hitting that threshold of a 7, you are working in an equivalent way to the old A and A star. 7, 8, 9 equivalent to the old A and A star. So this is really just about perceptions. I just wanted you to see it in this way so you can help really students to understand exactly what these grades mean and how they fit into the old model. Because us older people who aren't at school at the moment, we're kind of still thinking AA star or C plus ways, and we need to begin to understand what it is in the new grading. So 4 plus equivalent to a C plus before, and that's a level 2 pass. And 7, 8 and 9, very good grades to be receiving, equivalent to the old A and A star. Just wanted to mention about the forecast grades and how these are worked out. We actually use a system where we're given the chances of a student, a percentage chance of a student achieving particular grades. And as you can see from this graph, it's not a cut and dry. This one, the highest chance, if you like, of people similar in prior attainment to your child. So if they had similar Key Stage 2 results, for example, this graph shows the number of people, the percentage of people that got GCSE grades with a similar profile at Key Stage 2, for example. So in this case, 36% of similar prior attainment students would be getting a 7 as they come to GCSE, but that doesn't mean that's the most likely grade for your child. What it means is, in historical terms, the people who started out at a similar place to you, 36% of those got a 7, but you can see that for grade 8, 19% got those and 15% actually got a 9. 27% though on the other side of it did get a 6, and then only 4% got a 5. So although we pick out one grade, this isn't the grade that your child will necessarily get. There's a lot that's dependent on the way they work, how they apply themselves, and there's perfectly good chances of them getting something, for example, higher than the forecast grade that we give. It gives a benchmark only, it's not an outcome by default. There is, of course, depending on how they're working, the chance they may get lower than the forecast grade. And again, this is dependent on how they work and their attitude in school and how well they apply themselves as we would wish them to. So although we focus on one forecast grade, it is based on a chances graph like this, and there's every chance that given the right sort of application, the student could well be aiming higher than this forecast grade. It's a benchmark, it's a forecast, it's not a foregone conclusion. Now Mrs. Mackay will talk a bit more about how this works through the course of the 2 years, but I just wanted to mention and point out that although we concentrate on 1 to 9 grades at certain points through the 2 years, marking is not often done in 9 to 1 grades. We wouldn't always mark by giving a number to the student. We actually think that feedback is by far the best way for people to move forward, although sometimes we will do summative assessments. But even those grades will be based on part of the course and won't necessarily be a full reflection of the overall grade at the end. The feedback will be given in the following terms. So the feedback will be designed to give subsequent student action, things they can do in order to improve. The feedback is intended to be a dialogue between the teacher and the student, and there'll be various methods of feeding back. So there'll be some that could be written, some could be verbal, some could be online, some could be directly onto pieces of work, or feedback may be given in other ways by setting some follow-up work, for example. So it wouldn't necessarily be a grade or a written comment. It could be something for them to do or redo based on the work that's already been done. And all of these methods of feedback go to making successful teaching and learning. The summative grades, 9 to 1, we would do significant assessments through the 2 years, and they will be given a 9 to 1 grade. But as I mentioned before, that may not be a holistic grade for the whole qualification. That could be for one particular part of it, so we need to take those in context. You will get projected grades where the teacher, increasingly close as they go through, will be looking at as much evidence as they've got and projecting a grade forward. So thinking in the best case scenario really, or taking the way the student is working at the moment and projecting that forward, thinking with normal ways of working, with them applying themselves as they go through the rest of the course, taking advantage of feedback they've been given, what may they achieve at the end. So they will get some summative grades as they go through, and they will get projected grades on your reports. But marking is not often done in 9 to 1. Feedback is key to all of that. I just wanted to run through some GCSE results from 2020. So you'll probably be aware this year has been slightly different, and we've been given students centre assessed grades, and in most cases they have received that as their GCSE result. We're really pleased with the way that students have worked over the past 2 years, and in brackets is the 4-year average. We want to give you a bit of confidence really in the way that teaching and learning happens at St Aidan's, and showing you these should hopefully do that. We worked very successfully through the GCSE years, and these figures show some of that. So in 2020, 95% of students gained a level 2 pass, that's grades 9 to 4, and our 4-year average there is 91%. The very highest there in the 7 to 9 bracket, 47% of all grades in all subjects were at that level. So getting on for 50% of all grades awarded were 7 to 9, and our average there is 44%. So again, really pleased with that, and that shows across all subjects the success that we have with our students. In English and Math, 95% gained a 9 to 4 in both subjects, and the average there over the past 4 years is 89%. And the last one is what's called Progress 8. This is a measure of students as they start secondary school, so using Key Stage 2 SATs, and as they finish with their GCSEs. It takes the best 8 subjects that they have received grades in for GCSE, and it measures the progress then compared to national figures against the progress from Key Stage 2. And you can see there that our Progress 8 figure for this year, 2020, was plus 0.7, and actually that's the 4-year average as well over the past years. And that means we're getting on for pretty much 3/4 of a grade higher than the national average. So that's across all ability ranges, looking at where students start, so where is their Key Stage 2 starting point, their results from the SATs, and the points that nationally students then generally ended up. And we're really pleased with that because it shows a measure across the ability range, and it shows we're consistently working very high in comparison to national averages. So again, I'm just showing you those to show you what sorts of things happen and how well our teaching and learning works through Key Stage 4.
Hello, I'm going to talk to you about the children's progress through their GCSE courses and just pass on some useful information about the next 2 years. So they've started their courses and the start of Year 10 sometimes can be a little bit tricky. Children are in classes with people they don't necessarily know. The 2 halves of the year are mixed up a little bit. So it may have all felt slightly new and slightly different, and more so this year, of course, because of everything being new and different anyway. So they've done really well. They've made a great start to the year by and large. We do want them to enjoy these next 2 years, and we do want them eventually to find success in terms of achieving what they need to achieve to move on to the next stage of their education, whether that be here at school or at college, in apprenticeship, whatever it is that they want to do. That is our aim for the students in years 10 and 11, so that they can make it to the next steps with success. In terms of telling you how your sons and daughters are doing in their GCSE courses, we've got some calendared dates where we communicate with you formally, and these are as follows. Monday the 7th of December you should receive a progress review. It'll come home in your son or daughter's school bag, so you might want to check those. And that's a progress review which tells you how your son or daughter is doing in terms of against their target grade, in terms of a projection. So we will be projecting what we think is the most likely grade outcome by the end of year 11. And that's how we report home from now on. So this is different to years 7, 8 and 9. You'll now receive a projected grade, which means it's our best estimate of what the pupil will achieve at the end of the course if they carry on making the same kind of progress. After Christmas, you can see there's a parents' evening. Hopefully that might even be in person, and if not, we'll carry out that event virtually, and you'll have an opportunity to discuss with all your son or daughter subject teachers how they're doing. The main event really in terms of assessment for year 10 is the 4th of May. So for 2 weeks we run year 10 exams prior to the GCSE exams starting for year 11. They're run as formal exams, they're in the main hall, the exam hall, they have all the same rules, they can't have phones or watches, see-through pencil cases only, all those things. And they're a really good rehearsal for the proper exams that they will sit in December in the mocks for year 11 and in the final exams, in the final GCSEs. We'll mark and feed back those exams in school, and then they will form part of what we put into the final written report of the year, and you'll receive that on the 2nd of July. The written reports are just like the progress reviews, so they'll have a projected grade against target, but they will also have a written teacher comment along the lines of what your son or daughter is currently doing very well and what they need to do going forward. You'll see a reference on our progress reviews and on our reports to the St Aidan's code, which you'll be familiar with already, but just as a reminder, the code letters stand for those things there, for community, organisation, determination and enterprise, and we still will report that to you on a 5-point scale, where 5 is the very, very best it could be, and 1 is some cause for concern in that area. We always say that the number 3 is good, and it is. Number 4 is super, and number 5 is super, super. So as a school, we look at all of these. So after the progress reviews and the reports, I will always have a meeting with significant heads of subject and heads of year and everybody that knows something about the year 10s. And we look at all of them. And if we notice that the number 2 has been given several times, then we start to get a little bit concerned, and we do some work with those children. It might mean some contact with yourselves, it might mean putting in place some measures in school, but we certainly don't want to see 2s. They're not great. They're us telling you that something's not wonderful, and it could be in any aspect of their learning. It could be that they just always forget stuff. They might get an organisation 2 because they just can't quite organise themselves, or whatever. So they're to help us to work out how the children are learning and what we can do to help them to improve. In terms of assessing and feeding back to pupils, during the year we should be doing lots of what we would call low stakes exercises and tests with our pupils. So these are the kind of recall exercises that they don't have to revise for, that they're not a big deal, they shouldn't be getting nervous or anxious about, but they're just kind of ongoing recall activities that make sure that they know the content that we're delivering. And then alongside that, every 6 weeks or so, they should sit a more significant assessment in each of their subjects. So actually my year 10 business class are about to do their first assessment. We're a little bit ahead of the game this year, so roughly speaking 6 weeks, but not exactly 6 weeks. And these tell us a little bit more about how they're progressing. So this is a kind of assessment where the pupils would get notice They'd be expected to revise and prepare, and then we would feed back, so they'd always be assessed by a teacher, a written response by a teacher, and that would be along the lines of what went well, so what we feel they can already do, even better if, what we feel that they need to work on next, and then we would ask them to make a pupil response. So we would ask them to do something, maybe rewrite a question or improve an aspect of their work, some reflection and improvement on the pupil's part as well. It says green sheets there in brackets because some of our feedback sheets are green. Actually, I think they're blue in my department, but they sometimes are green and they become known as the green sheets. It really is just a standard format. It looks slightly different in every department, but it's a standard format for significant assessment feedback, which has both what went well and even better if. The reason for telling you that really is so that you can seek them out in your child's work. You should find these in their planners, evidence of it in the planners. You should find them in their files and in their exercise books. So that would be a good thing to look for and to talk about, I think, at home. There are formal year 10 exams, as I said, and that kind of finishes the cycle, if you like, of assessment in school with the children. So lots of low stakes testing, some significant assessments periodically, and then the end of year exams in May. We've done quite a lot of work in our school in recent years on growth mindset, and for people unfamiliar with the growth mindset ideas, they're originally the work of Carol Dweck and have since been taken up by many educationalists and many schools and universities all over the place. And we've got some key messages there that we like to share with our pupils. So I just thought I would share a couple of them here in the knowledge that when parents, school and children all kind of talk about the same things, it tends to work quite nicely, doesn't it? So some of the messages are here. I like this one, success, and I think probably maybe definitely in adolescence, people think this, success is very linear and that successful people tend to go from A to B without much trouble, and it's a lovely straight line. Whereas in actual fact, those of us who've been around a bit longer know that success is indeed quite messy and you don't really go from A to B in a straight line ever at all, and that mistakes are a very important part of learning, failure is a very important part of success. So that's one of the key messages. Another of the key messages of growth mindset is this word yet. We're not there yet, and it's amazingly powerful is this little word. I think the temptation is that children do pigeonhole themselves and they decide that they are this person or that person, they're good at this, they're not good at that. And I think we need to resist that kind of talk like, oh, I'm never good at maths, no one in my family is good at maths, or that kind of thing. And just to keep telling them that effort is really important and that with continued effort we can change our outcomes and we can be different people and we can change the future for ourselves. We need to challenge our children routinely. They need to be really used to sitting down and trying to do work that's slightly too difficult so that they learn to struggle, they learn to find strategies, they learn to do things that they think are a little bit too hard with appropriate help. So there's some of the key messages, and this idea of yet is the idea that when they say, well, I can't do that, we say, well, no, you can't do it yet. That's fine. You can't do it yet. You need to do this, that, and the other. And then I feel that this is a really important thing to say because although growth mindset ideas are very sound, we all know, don't we, as parents and as teachers and everything else, we all know that there is a point when enough is enough and some children work too hard and that continued effort is not, it shouldn't go on forever and ever and ever. There's a time to rest and there's a time to do something else, a time to switch off. So in conclusion, I just thought I'd share my top 3 tips for enjoying and succeeding at GCSE. The first one is to make sure, as much as you can, that the year 10 student in your household has a study habit. This might sound a little bit old-fashioned, but what I mean by that is it is a routine where they do sit down, look at their planner, work through it methodically, spend some really difficult time thinking if they have to, but getting used to that being a normal part of their everyday existence. It's very, very difficult for children that haven't established this kind of habit to do well at GCSE. There's simply too much to learn, and they can't do it all at the end. So it does need to be more marathon than sprint. They do need to get into the habit early on of sitting down in an organised way, somewhere hopefully that they can be undisturbed, somewhere where they can concentrate and give their full attention to their work. It says parent doc in brackets there because we're sending with this presentation a document that might help you over the next couple of years. It's got all the GCSE courses, the exam board, the recommended text and the recommended revision guides, and any other resources that the heads of subject here feel might be useful. So that's a good reference. As well as being sent to you, it is also on our school website in the Learning and Progress section. My second top tip is to keep working with your sons and daughters in using their planners. Although we're a little bit restricted in school at the minute about what we can do, we can't write in them to quite the same extent, walk around the room, etc. It really is important that they use them as an organisational tool. They need to put their work in there that they need to do at home, all the deadlines, any other reminders like careers appointments. That's going to happen quite a lot now through 10 and 11. You know, after school football or whatever it is that they need to remind themselves of, and use the planner as a working document to help them to get organised. So I would encourage you, if you can, to look at the planner with your son or daughter, to talk about what's in it, check that the work's being done, because the more of that happens, you know, the easier it is for them to stay on track. And then my last one really, in terms of keeping everybody enjoying these 2 years, is to encourage them to maintain their other interests. Nobody is suggesting that they should stop doing everything else and just work. I've never met anybody that thinks that's a very good idea. So we do need to encourage them to do the things they really enjoy, whether that's at school or out of school, but a balance in their week I think is very important too. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to hand over now, but just to say I'm very happy to take questions. Obviously we would normally do this in school and we'd have time to chat at the end, so please email or phone. I'm very happy. So I'm Ruth McQuire, the normal school email, but just into the admin address will be fine, and then I'll get back to you with any queries that you have. Thank you.
Hello, this is Sarah Fairburn, Head of English at St Aidan's. The following slides will give you a brief overview of the GCSE English Language and English Literature courses. These are 2 linear courses. They don't involve any coursework, and there are 4 exams at the end of Year 11. 2 English Language, 2 English Literature. Year 10 have started brilliantly this year and have already completed their spoken language presentations. These are worth 0% of the GCSE, but they are given as an endorsement which will appear on their GCSE certificates at the end of Year 11 as a pass, merit or a distinction. Please see the school website for this year's course schedule, which shows the timing of practice assessments, which are all conducted in class. Firstly, I'll cover the GCSE English Language course. There are 2 exam papers, both 1 hour 45 minutes long. The first paper will have an extract from an unseen piece of fiction, either from the 20th or 21st century. Students are then required to answer 4 questions to assess their reading skills. The second section of the paper covers descriptive or narrative writing skills, where good organisation, vocabulary, sentence structure, and spelling, punctuation and grammar are assessed. On paper 2, this assesses the students' reading skills in response to 2 non-fiction or non-literary texts, one of which will be from the 19th century. The second section of this paper assesses the skills of writing to put forward a point of view or an argument. This is again assessing good organisation, varied vocabulary and sentence structure, and spelling, punctuation and grammar. We strongly recommend that students read as widely as possible across the 2 years, so they're able to access the unseen extracts on these papers. Whereas the papers on the English language course are worth 50% each, on the English literature course, one paper is worth 40% and the other 60%. On the first paper, which is an hour and 45 minutes long, the students respond to a Shakespeare play. We always do Macbeth at St Aidan's. On the second section, they respond to a 19th century novel. You should have recently received a letter via email informing you about which text your child is studying. Please see the school website in the Year 10 letter section if you haven't seen this email. We will be studying the 19th century novel after half term. AQA offer a choice of texts which the teachers select from once they've met their classes. Popular choices are Christmas Carol or Frankenstein or Jekyll and Hyde. All students respond to the same type of task where there's an extract on the exam paper which they analyse and then they have to link out to the rest of the novel. It's important then that the students know their novels very well. They are marked on the same assessment criteria, it doesn't matter which text. The second literature paper is 2 hours 15 minutes long. The poetry sections are dominant. First of all, students receive an anthology from AQA containing 15 poems which they have to study. The exam requires them to analyse one of these poems that'll be printed off on the exam paper and connect it with another poem they've studied but won't be printed on the paper. The other poetry section contains 2 unseen poems where students are asked to analyse the writer's ideas and methods in the first poem, and then they're asked to compare the 2 poems just on the writer's methods. The other section of this exam is called the modern drama. I'll send another letter out this time next year informing you of which text your child will be studying once the teachers have made their selections. Popular choices are Blood Brothers, History Boys, The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime, and Inspector Calls. There are many resources available to help students. Teachers will set homework and lesson resources in their own class teams. There is guidance for parents on how to help their children on the English department area of the website, where you'll also find a list of set texts. We use a wonderful podcast resource called AudioPie. Students can access this from home and it's used in class. We'll be giving them the username and password very soon. Bite size is always useful, and we've found that the Globe Theatre and Royal Shakespeare Company have provided some fantastic support resources as well as examples of some of their productions. Revision books like Cambridge University Press, Hodder, CGP and Snap revision guides have actually been very, very useful for students in previous years. I'll just draw your attention to the wider reading lists we've provided. Your child should have one of these lists in their exercise books, but I've also put a copy on the school website. I cannot stress enough how important it is that they read as widely as they can. It just makes it so much easier for them to access the range of vocabulary they'll be reading in the texts on both these courses. If there's anything else you'd like to ask, please get in touch and I'll be happy to help. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Walker, I'm the Head of Maths at St Aidan's. So to deal with the increase in content when we changed to the 9-to-1 GCSE, we decided to treat the new GCSE course as a 3-year as opposed to a 2-year course. So your children will usually have the same teacher this year as they had in year 9, and this teacher will see them through to the end of year 11, we'd hope. The idea behind this was that each class would benefit time-wise from the consistency that this would provide. That's especially important with the climate we find ourselves in at the moment. We also feel that this was a really strong factor in the results that we've achieved since the change to the GCSE over the last 4 or 5 years. On the school website there's a flyer with some information and advice on how you can help your child with their maths at GCSE. This includes login details to a few of our websites that we subscribe to, including My Maths, which you'll have seen quite a bit of, and some things that will become increasingly important, such as Just Maths. So each student has been given a homework book that looks like the pictures on this slide, and we set work from this throughout the year, and we use it in the run-up to and reviewing of key assessments throughout. Each page has got a code at the bottom of it which can be searched on My Maths, and that will bring up an interactive lesson on that topic. There are also answers which have been put on Moodle and now on Teams so that students can check their own work. Obviously, if we're giving the students the answers to the homework, that means we expect them to show they're working out to a greater degree. I would urge you to try and speak to your children about what they're doing in maths wherever you can. I know they don't always want to talk about it though. We encourage the students to practice their mathematical skills with their parents, with you at home, and to try and explain their methods. This is really helpful when they come to the GCSE exams, as they're expected to explain how a method works and to find mistakes in it, and sometimes to draw comparisons. So it's really beneficial if you have attempted questions together at home using different methods, like you can see on the slide, because they're able to draw conclusions and spot similarities and differences between those two methods. It'll help their understanding as well as their reasoning skills. By working together, that is students, parents and teachers, we can make sure the students are in the best possible place for their exams. Please don't underestimate how helpful you can be when it comes to helping your children develop their mathematical skills, particularly their problem solving. A lot of the skills being used to assess a problem are ones you use every day without even thinking about it, and as such you're in an excellent position to unlock a question for your children. Finally, we operate an open door policy in the maths department, so if your child is having any difficulty with maths, they can seek out any member of the department, whether they're currently taught by them or not. So please encourage your children to seek us out if they need a hand. We'll always help them, regardless of who we teach at the time. It is easier for us though if they come with a specific question rather than a wider topic. Okay, thank you for everything you do with your children. We really do appreciate it as the maths department.
Hello, hi parents. Just here to talk to you a little bit about the pastoral support in the year group as we move through year 10 and obviously through year 11 as well. The year group, the students have made a really good start to their GCSEs to year 10, especially given the circumstances. They obviously have regular contact with the pastoral team in terms of due to time, where the tutors are able to support them with the organisation of files and folders and how to conduct themselves through GCSE study to continue to guide them as they move through year 10. We help them with a whole range of issues as you guys do as well. Things to do with relationships in school, behaviour management sometimes when needed, work ethic, contact about emotional issues and things like that. So obviously that'll be ongoing, and the students know that they can come and speak to me about that sort of thing whenever they need to. Hopefully parents' evening will run this year, and then we can discuss face-to-face issues that need to be discussed. So fingers crossed about that one, but at the moment it's fairly unclear as to whether that will go ahead. We have got an extracurricular program that's taking place in school, albeit very limited in comparison to what we're usually able to offer, given the circumstances. But the students are always encouraged to find that balance and pursue interests and become sort of healthy in their sort of holistic development, and not just focusing on the academic side of things. It's really important that they do get that balance, and like I say, they are sort of encouraged to do that at every opportunity, really. I'll be sending out very soon a letter from myself, which will also contain information about the course contents for GCSE study. So you'll receive that very soon. And then just lastly, to reiterate how well the year group has started, given the circumstances. We're really proud of them. So long may that continue. Best wishes.